You're right, mate. Just before we get into the show, just wanted to thank you for listening to the show. I wanted to remind you that there's a Patreon if you want to, chuck us a couple of quid as a little thank you, or, as a little bit of, make the show better. Here's £3. Well, it's up to you, There's also a Redbubble if you fancy some t-shirts in that. There's one with Mothman with his cock out. There's one with Mothman without his cock out. And there's a load of the taxidermy stuff now on t-shirts and quotes from other people that they've said to me online and that when they've been giving me abuse. I'll let you get into the show. You alright? I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. Sadistic, well-rehearsed, wildly suicidal narcissists. Of course, this week we're talking all about dentists. Can you trust them? Men and women that have spent 5 years honing a craft that many deem to be worthless. There's no one more in your face than your average dentist. They spend their days, inflicting pain on people, hold a disdain for the elderly, and daily make weak, innocent children cry. But why did he do it? Is it just to lay down a woman's top? Is it to stare at men's balls as they lie on the chair? Or is it because they really, really like teeth? They just seem like a really difficult person to trust, innit? Like, they spend all day talking to people but don't actually want a response. They might as well be stand-up comics, innit? Like, maybe they're all failed stand-ups who struggled at both aspects of the job. Like, because as a dentist, you don't really stand for very long, and the 7 minutes is literally like pulling teeth. So could the push of podcasting be engineered by real doctors and actual healthcare professionals to try and rid the world of dentists? Could this be where the suicidal tendencies come from? A life imprisoned in a newly renovated house with a co-worker that hates your very existence? Because, we all know that like a dental nurse just wants to become a dentist, but that dentist is going to be ego tripping all day because they finally have a lackey of their very own. With inventions like gum disease, tooth decay and gingivitis, it's hard to believe in these masked crusaders. But to understand why they want to play around with people's mouths, we've got to understand teeth. Why do we just have spare teeth? And why are our adult teeth already residing inside a child's head? Is this a genetic mishap, or could it be why children are actually able to perceive more of reality in the ways of ghosts and invisible friends? Well, there is some evidence to this because one world-famous invisible being, like an entity if you like, literally stops interacting with children once they've lost half their teeth. And that obviously is the Tooth Fairy, a character that introduces a child to the concept of selling their own body for money. A factor that a lot of parents seem to overlook. A lot of conservative people would suggest that the parents are to blame for their older teenage children selling pictures of their bumholes on OnlyFans, but I'm inclined to agree. If they weren't indoctrinating their children to sell pieces of themselves for money, then maybe we would still have a ready stream of free pornography still. Like, there's a conspiracy in it. I know it's got very little to do with teeth, but do you think that the sort of the great wipe, if you like, from Pornhub was of a lot of amateur porn was because OnlyFans was on its way? Maybe it's owned by the same people. Like, maybe. Like, who knows? Anyway, though, let's have a song and then we'll get into teeth and dentists. Actually, what we'll do is we'll have the remix of Freddie Gibbs' Thuggin' with Madlib that I promised you last week. Think about that Tooth Fairy again, though, because it's a potentially interdimensional being that collects the teeth of children. Could the Tooth Fairy be a friendly interdimensional being, or could they actually be the dodgiest of all interdimensional beings? Because, they dress up in a frock and a wig, and then they float about in your child's bedroom. Then, what makes it even weirder is that they collect the teeth of the kid. So, what did he do with them teeth? I put it to you, dear listener, that they collect these teeth to sell on the shadow black market to other ethereal beings. The lazy ones, or the ones whose parents wanted them to be hunters, but instead, they grew up to be Bigfoots and they've spent eternity preventing alien abductions rather than harvesting the sadness of humans from all around the world. refusing to latch onto the spinal chakra and pumping themselves full of ethereal tears, letting down their ancestors, parents, and friends. Or, at least they were, until the tooth fairy figured out that they could sell them the teeth of children. Often, as well, still coated in blood, and sometimes, with the memory of painful extraction connected to them. Like dental floss to a dog's arsehole. Now, what if floss itself is a scam? Because think about floss. Why would dentists ever want to promote healthy teeth? Surely they make more money by removing your teeth. I know some of you might think, well, they can earn more over a longer period of time. But realistically, with such an alleged high suicide rate, dentists don't really have the time to play the long game. So I put it to you that the dentists have all teamed up to bring us tooth floss, a surefire way, if used correctly, to expose more surface area of a tooth to the elements and therefore rot it quicker and more effectively. When you want to wash your body, you don't split the toes, do you, or separate your fingers out when you're having a shower, because you want to conserve soap and, save the environment. An environment that is constantly put under threat by the Colgate keepers of oral hygiene by telling us to brush our teeth for 2 minutes twice a day, which, on average, means we're sending 2,184 gallons of water down the plug hole to its watery grave. Water contaminated with so-called gingivitis, plaque, and possibly even flakes of human enamel, which, if you actually look up how much water that is, that's enough to fill 3 or 4 good-sized jacuzzis. And that's water that you pretty much bathe in with your neighbours and your children, and sometimes your neighbours' children if you live in like a commune, I guess. And in that water there, you've got shit particles and all sorts in a jacuzzi bath, but we don't wash that water down the grid after we've used it once, do we? We keep it in there to use it again and again. But that we don't use that on our teeth, I guess, but it's still touching our bodies and that, body's a temple and all that, but not if you're bathing with your fucking friends. But anyway, that water, that 2,184 gallons of water, that's only one person. Imagine in the average household, which, according to national statistics, is home to 2.4 people. But, since we're living in the fucking real world and not the land of make-believe, let's imagine that 0.4 of a person is actually a complete whole person who also, washes their teeth. That's 6,552 gallons of water a year wasted. And if you listen to climate fanatics, that's 6,552 gallons of water that we're depriving from the polar bears. Water that could be better used for cleaning a car, wet t-shirt contests, or water fights, dependent on your age group. One thing I find weird, is how it's so easy to believe that dentists could be spies or something, though, because if you think about, like, I like to bring in a bit of etymology, etymology, where words come from and that. So think about incisor, sounds a lot like insider. Whilst, you've also got molars, which sound a lot like moles, which is yet another term for spies. But who are the dentists spying for? Like, molar also kind of sounds like molac. It's only really one letter difference in a slightly different order. Maybe even in the same order, just without an R and a K. I don't know how you would spell molac. I'm not overly sure how you spell molar. I'm guessing it's MOLAR, but I might be wrong. Anyway, could the molac moles who are involved with molars, could they be working for the secret societies that run the world? Is that why, they spend so long at universities to become a dentist? All they really have to do is learn what order the teeth sit in. And I reckon that's what, with the drinking at uni, that's a year at most in it to learn the order of teeth. Then you learn how to replace one, which is going to be like a year and a half to learn how to swap a tooth out for the tooth with a fucking listening device inside. That's going to be easy. Let's say a year and a half, because you might have to share the equipment and peer assess each other, kind of thing. And then you've got like a few months left for exams and that, because you've been studying throughout it, because you're at uni, you're taking your future into your own hands. So what are these other 2 years for? Now, dear listener, I put it to you that those 2 years are spent schmoozing with other influential people that will shape our society. Politicians, psychiatrists, lawyers, and business academics, all making unspeakable, unbreakable bonds amongst themselves through ritualistic practices, meaning they can never speak of their meetings or of their mutual acquaintances. And maybe that's why they have so many so-called suicides in air quotation marks, We all know that dentists can't keep their mouths shut. They're always talking, but what if they tend to let slip that they're in these secret clubs all around the world? Maybe the dentists are suicided, quote-unquote suicided, by the other members of these groups, desperate to keep the secrets amongst themselves. Maybe that's why the media has become more of a force in recent decades. Maybe they started bringing in journalists and the odd statistician. It's an hard word, statistician, so that they can massage the suicide rates and promote the idea that dentists top themselves more regularly, so that no one ever suspects the worshippers of ancient deities, and instead think it's just because they spend their time fingering one of the least fun holes to finger on a human body. It's something that, unfortunately, though, we may never know. Let's have a song. This is Boldy James's Hold Me Down. From researching this week, I've learnt that the World Health Organization, possibly known as the more commonly referred to Doctor Who, actually say that acupressure is real, which I've always just presumed that Western medicine was very, very dismissive of that and of acupuncture. And now I don't want to patronise you, the other person on the end of this, whoever it is that you actually are, but I didn't realise that acupuncture and acupressure were different things till I saw them written down next to each other, well, one above and below each other in a list. Obviously, acupuncture is where they shove pins in you and that, and the needles and stuff, whilst acupressure is where you press and squeeze different parts of your body. Also, a little side note, I learnt that down in the southwest, some people refer to heroin addicts as pinners because they pin themselves. Is that do you get that in where you live? Is that a turn of phrase where you are? Let me know in the Discord. So with acupressure though, that's like it's and acupuncture, they're still following the same mantra of something called meridian lines that lie all over your body, connecting each bit to a seemingly unrelated part. For example, that fleshy bit in between your thumb and your forefinger. Apparently, if you squeeze there a bit, that can be if you get your other thumb and forefinger on there, and if that's been squozed recently, apparently that can be good for relieving toothache. But they don't want you knowing that you can just go to, Chinese-owned businesses to relieve your toothache, or that you could just go to Primark, spend £2 on a pair of gloves that are a size too small and relieve your toothache. Or, even then, failing that, maybe the Freemasons are the ones holding back information about acupressure because it would mean that joiners could make more money. Whilst they're working on a job, and the van's being left alone and it's got a couple fucking clamps out there, that's a van full of G-clamps potentially when you're on job. And they could rent out the van, mate, to people who can't afford a dentist, not to rip out the teeth with fucking hacksaws and pliers and stuff, but just so that people can squeeze their own fleshy bits of their hands with the spare G-clamps and other clamps. Other types of clamps are available, but they can just wind up the crank on the metal clamp and clamp down on the fleshy bit at the back of your hand. They're helping out the community, caring the community, and they can earn themselves a little bit more money with maybe like a little honesty tin. Obviously, depending where you're working, you might want to put some security measures in place so people don't just rob all your power tools, but joiners could even make a little bit more money in the tooth trade if they were to help bring back some old traditions, because the Chinese will tell you to chuck your baby teeth onto the roof for some vague positive outcome. They may even say to throw your teeth from your upper jaw on the roof and just throw the lower jaw teeth on the ground outside for even more vague reasons that I didn't care to read about. But in England, see, we used to believe that you should burn your child's baby teeth to protect them in the afterlife, and the carpenters could then, also sell their offcuts of woods to the G-clamp users to help them burn their kids' teeth, which then they're getting rid of waste, and it comes into with that new law that supposedly took place in England where you're no longer allowed to burn wet timber. Well, a carpenter's never going to have wet timber. They could sell their offcuts for you to fucking melt baby teeth with, so that if your kid dies a bit prematurely, it won't get stuck in whatever the ancient folklore version of purgatory was, fucking walking around aimlessly as a ghost, I guess. Anyway, if we look at this though, these ancient beliefs through like modern eyes and that, It might have just been a way for, well, you can imagine that it's the way for intelligent people to teach the uneducated masses to just not store bits of rotten human around the house. You know, because, I mean, burning them might not melt them away, but it definitely sterilise them to a certain extent. Though, then again, around the same time, there were other beliefs in mainland Europe that if you burn children's teeth, you can protect yourself from witches. I don't know if the teeth have to be from your child, or if you could just go and collect other children's teeth. Do they have to have, I don't know if they have to have fallen out naturally either. So realistically, you could have just, in ancient European times, you know, I'm not saying do this now, but you could have gone around with a horse and cart, which you can still do now, but the next bit's the dodgy bit, and just fucking collect children, like the fucking Pied Piper. Maybe that's what the Pied Piper was doing. You might remember me fucking Bogey Persons episode. We didn't quite know what the Pied Piper would do with all those children. Maybe he was collecting them so that the witches could come and attack Europe or wherever that was. So now that the people of the town, they wasn't able to harvest the teeth from the children, to burn them, to protect themselves from witches. Maybe the Pied Piper was just trying to allow witches in, break that barrier, if you like. But, I mean, that kind of ties in the Tooth Fairy, I guess, because the Tooth Fairy in other parts of the world that don't speak English, the Tooth Fairy seems to be a rat or a mouse, which ties in the Pied Piper again, because the Pied Piper took all the mice or the rats away, wasn't it? So they were collecting the teeth in other parts of Europe at the time, and it connects everything to children's teeth. Do you see what I mean? Everything links, mate. Everything I talk about tends to link, and it's really fucking weird. And, you know, the rats, and that's very, very on brand for the world around you. And if you did want to buy some stuff, you know, made out of rats, fucking www.worldaroundyou.com. Now, in some European folklore, they actually believed that teeth would actually help to keep the fairies away, which when you look through folklore, like fairy or the fae, do seem interchangeable with the modern day interdimensional beings or demons. So that's interesting that they want to keep them away, but we're actually taught that the teeth will attract the fairies. So who do we believe? Like, is it an inversion of our very reality, all of this with the Tooth Fairy, or, you know, like, who do you believe? Do you believe modern-day science, which seems to be run by charlatans and liars? Or do you believe people that tell stories about folklore, which seem to be run by charlatans and liars? Like, who do you pick? What sort of side are you on? What if the witches, though, were actually protecting the world from the fairies and demons, and these rats and mice that were in Spanish folklore and Hispanic folklore, which I think is the same as Spanish, unless it's just that, does Hispanic mean Latin American? I'm not sure, but I think they had it in Latin America and in Spain, but that's obviously because the Spanish and the Portuguese went over to South America. So, you know, I'm not 100% sure, but I know that both parts of the world had folklore to say that fucking mice and rats come and harvest the teeth. But what if the demons, right? Well, the rats. Let's get back to the rats quickly. What if them rats and mice were actually familiars of the witches, and then they would use them familiars to collect the teeth, and then the teeth get brought back to the witches, and the witches would use them teeth then to ward away the demons. But what if the demons have already taken over Western civilization? Maybe the demons, as we know them, are responsible for sugar. Because, you know, a lot of history around sugar production and that is pretty evil, innit? But then if you look at the effect sugar has on teeth, it becomes even seedier. Sugar destroys teeth, rots them from the inside out once it's rotted the outside of them. So by making everyone lose their teeth, that means they have no inbuilt protection against the fairies or the interdimensional beings. Then you go to the dentist and they give them a scraping as well to remove what they call plaque. But what if plaque is actually just a residue that demons leave in your mouth at night time? But the barrier made by teeth protects your body from being taken over by demons. The dentist will occasionally damage your teeth as well, hoping, you know, that they can get away with it. And I remember watching this documentary years ago about this woman that had some tooth surgery, and then she could hear voices afterwards and pick up radio stations just in her head, which, I mean, that seems pretty suspicious, innit? Maybe the dentists are also putting listening devices inside the fillings, because, I mean, it would make sense, wouldn't it? Maybe that explains why everything is now sugar-free and why sugar is being used less and less in newer products. We're told it's, you know, for better health, but what if it's just because everyone is now buying smart house devices and smartphones and mobile phones? So now you no longer need to put aerials and listening devices into people's teeth. Maybe, and all that, them listening devices in your teeth, mate, the aerials in there, I don't know if you remember this, but maybe that would explain why, the fobs for car doors, for electric doors on cars, locking mechanisms and alarms and that. Maybe that's why they used to work better when you'd hold them by your face. If you held them out at arm's length, they didn't really work. Put it next to your brain, mate, and it fucking locks your car, doesn't it, even if the battery's low. Could it have something to do with that? Maybe the fillings would amplify the signal. I mean, this isn't all made up, though, this distrust of dentists. Because I when I was younger, I was about 16, I remember allowing a student dentist to do a filling. They asked me, would you mind if the student did it? I said, do they know what they're doing? They said, yeah, they'll be fine. So I said, yeah, all right then. And then within a fortnight, I was having a filling put in. I'm not a proud man, I'll tell you. I've not got great teeth. But she did a filling. This dentist lady, or dentist trainee, dentist lady. I hope she's not a dentist now. She was shit at her job. She was shit at it then. She's probably shit at it now. Within a fortnight, right, my tooth had got all infected, and my gum was really infected. It fucking hurt, man. I've never known pain like it. And this led to then the proper dentist removing that tooth, like root canal, and replacing it with a gold tooth. Now, luckily, it's at the back of my mouth and that, so it's not too noticeable. But they were still trying to charge me though at the time for a white tooth, whilst the gold one was free. So even then, they were trying to get money out of me, which makes me think that this tooth can't be real gold. It could be fake gold, which would definitely explain why the rest of my gums, and my gums and my inner cheeks, if it is fake gold, that explains why they've all gone green over the years, I guess. Anyway, let's have a song. This is Drugs in a Suitcase by Chris Webby. Might as well do a little cheeky advert in it, because no one's paying me to fucking advertise on this yet, so... Mystery boxes, mate. Mystery boxes are on my website at 30 quid a pop. Got some hairy danglers which are made out of rat skin and that. They're a tenner. You can pop them on the rear view mirror of your car. Got crystals, rocks, geodes, fossils, loads of stuff, mate. Even pairs of mouse testicles, chick hearts, kidneys, key rings, mate, at 3 quid a pop. Come and have a look. worldaroundyou.com. And now I'll let you get back on with the show. Getting back into dodgy dentists, though. Could it be fair to say that they might moonlight as at least operatives for the unseen hand? The big they? Well, according to various news sources, tooth fillings are actually fully capable of picking up radio signals. That wasn't make-believe in that TV show I mentioned before. And back in the day, how do we know they weren't purposely driving people mental by whispering into their teeth? Oh, Tick-Bitty Dave's going to come and get you. Tick-Bitty Dave's here. Tick-Bitty Dave's here. Sir, my teeth keep talking to me. Shut up, no they don't. My name is Tick-Bitty Dave. But they're all Tick-Bitty Dave. And Tick-Bitty Dave's going to come and get you. Because even the fucking thought of a stranger whispering into a tooth is pretty freaky. It doesn't have to be coming actually from your mouth. But if someone came up to you in the street and went, leans right into you, I'll set the scene, it's a foggy evening, I had a little bit of something to it, and then they lean over to you, they've grabbed you by your shirt collar, because, you're a posh fella, or lady, posh lady, you could be wearing a blouse, and they've grabbed your collar either way, the bit of your shirt just below your collar, you've done a couple of buttons down because you want people to think, you're approachable because you're not in work. And they lean into you and go, excuse me, mate, or, if you're a lady, excuse me, love, come here a minute, and you go over to them because, you think, oh, I like the look of them, and they just lean in, and you think, oh, they're going to kiss me, oof, where's this come from? And they just, get right up to your teeth, and they're like, have you heard the news about Tick-Bitty Dave? They're going to free him. Tick-Bitty Dave's on the rise, mate. Tick-Bitty Dave rising. Like that, that'd be fucking weird as fuck, mate. So, even if the fucking, even if they do the whispering, even if the whispering in your teeth is more like, I'm telling you now where to leave the money over here. Or if it's, kill them all. Kill all the people now. Kill every one of them. Even that's obviously worse than leave the money here. But you don't want to be getting told to kill people by the voices coming out of your teeth or whatever it is, then I think after a while, you're probably going to do what your teeth are telling you. And I've seen about how in the Cold War, they could direct radio waves and bounce radio frequencies off of buildings to be able to listen to a particular room around the corner or, fucking down the street. So why wouldn't they be parked up outside your house in a van, emitting signals into anybody's teeth that will fucking listen to them? Maybe that's why they want us to brush them all the time, mate. Fucking twice a day, brushing your teeth. It's just fucking aerial maintenance, mate. Fucking maybe that's what birds are for. If aerials are used for emitting signals, then what is it TV aerials are for? Because they're receiving signals, so they're not an aerial as such, are they? And pigeons go and sit on them, and maybe and I know it's silly to believe that birds are drones because I think that's probably more of a psyops than anything. Maybe they're not all real birds, maybe some of them are, but actually some of them are aerial cleaners, because when you look underneath the top layer of a pigeon's feathers, the base of the feathers aren't actually that dense as they are on the top, and they don't have the colouring. They're like it'd be fair to say a pigeon is like a portable, controllable feather duster. Now, I'm thinking maybe they introduced the feather duster in 1876 because someone in fucking Mrs. Hibbard's town was catching on to the birds not actually all being birds, but actually being government-controlled cleaning devices and messengers at the time. Could that be where we get the rhyme for Old Mother Hubbard from? That old woman that was always looking in the cupboard but nothing was there, was nothing there because it was full of these mechanical fucking cleaning pigeons. And maybe she was looking for an air rifle, to get rid of these fucking pigeons and to test which pigeons were real. But the government agents had already been to Mrs. Hibbard's, now known as Mother Hubbard's house, and removed all of her weapons so that she couldn't shoot the remote-controlled aviation aids. This, driving Susan wild, led her to create the feather duster and release it in 1876. As a way to teach that pigeons were actually doing, to tell people what pigeons were actually doing. Though at the time, the pigeons they weren't actually pigeons at the time, they were actually doves, and they would be using them to sort of clean newspapers as a term that we now would call censorship. And actually, specifically, the etymology again, that's actually where we get the term whitewashing from, people using doves to censor things. It wasn't for another 20 years, though, until the first radio tower would be built and released, and the big they couldn't allow the information about the doves to slip out at such an important time in the development of the then considered New World. Now, the demons I was talking about before, that may have developed the sugar industry, may actually be more akin, or at least in allegiance, with the gnomes that we've spoke of in previous weeks, since teeth tend to be replaced with a type of ceramic, or with, the earth itself, if you could look at it like that. Whereas realistically, plastic or metal is a much, much better substitute for teeth. It could also help with the wasting of food as well. Many would argue that you can in fact digest a bone so long as it's been cooked enough, but think about how much gas you're wasting to be able to cook a bone until it's soft. If you could just sharpen your teeth like they used to back in the day and cut through bone, you could eat that bone and save money on food whilst wasting less and sending less to landfill, mate. Maybe though, the plastic might interfere with the radio signal of the old aerials, so that could explain why you put plastic casing around your TV aerial wire though as well, so that you can aim your TV aerial better. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's why we don't have plastic teeth, because as far as I'm aware, a TV aerial isn't a live wire, so insulating it just has always felt a bit off to me, a bit dodgy. And the roof, the roof of a house is also ceramic as well, so maybe there's something I'm missing here. I'm not sure. We might find out about this in weeks to come. I'm not sure. Feel free again to let me know in the Discord if you've got any idea of what's going on here. But mentioning aerials again, and not to stick on aerials, and if I was to, be a bit hacky and mention another show, we could mention The Little Mermaid. It's got fuck all to do with it other than the lady's called Ariel in it. But the aerials, that isn't actually a conspiracy, the aerials in the teeth, because teeth in the past have actually picked up radio signals, and it does seem like there's now less metal fillings being used. And could that be because we were able to hear things that we shouldn't be able to hear? One thing you don't want to hear is that your neighbour's been collecting other people's teeth. People that they're not related to. Not like, when your mum keeps your uncle's scabs or original teeth in a wooden box in a bedroom, but more like when a bloke collects teeth and other organic material from the murder victims. It's bad enough finding out that the guy that lent you his power drill might have used it last week to drill into someone's skull. But I'm not going to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer now. I'm actually talking about Big Bobby, otherwise known as Robert Bedella. If he'd had friends, I guess, they might have called him Bobby B. But I'm guessing that if he had actually had friends, he probably wouldn't be getting talked about on my show now. So, swings and roundabouts, I guess. Well, he did kind of have friends, but they were mostly people he would coerce into needing him in their lives. He'd take in drug addicts and petty criminals and male prostitutes and stuff like that. And he said that he was trying to help them turn their lives around, and maybe he was trying because he was a member of his local neighbourhood association, the local neighbourhood watch, head curtain twitcher, if you like. Though I think it's fair to say though he was probably an eye twitcher as well. He seemed to do a really good job of making it seem like the lights were on, but realistically they were dimmed. They were dimmed right down. But that doesn't mean that he was dim. He was actually proper fucking clever, and he was from a young age as well. But he was beaten by his dad and compared by his dad to his brother, his younger brother, who his dad preferred an awful lot, so his dad had beat him with a belt, as was done back in the day apparently. Now he was looked down on by his dad as well because he wasn't that good at sports and wasn't really into sports and that, and he had a weird relationship with everyone that he seemed to know as well, which is probably caused by being fucking getting a belt round your head from your dad, I would have thought. And teachers as well said that he was difficult to teach, and he was usually the butt of the classroom bullies' jokes and fists, the receiving end of a punch, from bullies in the classroom. So, not the greatest start in life, which is, perfect for making a serial killer, I guess. Now, Bobby B's dad, we'll be friendly. He's because he's dead. I think we can get away with that. His dad died on Christmas Day one year, and having been very religious, because his dad came from Italy, they were devout Catholics, and he'd been very religious. This disenfranchised him somewhat with religion and all faiths. Now he did have pen pals all around the world as well, who taught him about their cultures. They'd also send him antiques and locally made jewellery and artefacts, which would impact massively later on in his later years. And all of this was probably made cheaper by his passion for stamp collecting, which I guess just goes to show that phylactery will get you everywhere. He was a man of stories though, was Bobby B. Stories like trying to befriend people by torturing the odd bit of poultry in front of them, an event that would lead him to quitting art school because the torture, cooking and display of waterfowl for art unsettled some of the teachers. But long story short, this guy's story outside of prison finishes with police officers discovering a load of human teeth in a couple of envelopes inside his house, along with a load of other human remains. But why was Bobby collecting the teeth? What did he know about them? Was he just a firm favourite? Did he have a few spare sets? Was he hoping to lure the Hispanic tooth mouse El Raton to canvas in America and finally catch El Raton? Or was he trying to start a gang war between the tooth-picking rodents and the fairies of America? Was he trying to protect himself in the afterlife? Was he hoping to be able to get good fortune after talking to so many Eastern Asian people about their beliefs and customs? If it is the latter, I think it's safe to say that the teeth police found there were from the bottom jaw of his victims, because they were all found in the cellar and not on his roof. But we'll learn more about the collector next week, because that's all we've got time for this week, guys. So we've got HDR and Jimmy later on today. A little cliffhanger for you. I've never done a cliffhanger before, what do you think of that? And I'll be back with Jimmy tomorrow night for Truth Seeking. Don't forget, if you want to learn how you can flirt with an antique table, my ebook's now on my website, fucking £2.50, and rat skin stuff's back as well. Maybe you want to be like the collector. Maybe you want to start collecting teeth. If you do, I've got some deals going on at www.worldaroundyou.com for 1 tooth, 2 teeth and 3 teeth. I'll fucking see you in a bit, mate. Thanks for listening, man. If you enjoyed the show, give it a share online, share it in your Instagram stories from Spotify, send it to a mate, talk about it on social media, tweet me, mate, tweet me. When I get 2,000 followers on Twitter, I'll be doing a taxidermy giveaway, so, that's something for you, innit? That's a little something. @WorldAroundYou, same as the name of the show. I'll see you in a bit, mate.